A few minutes ago, my son placed a letter in my hands. Even now, as I sit here speaking to you, I can still feel the weight of that envelope resting against my palms. It is strange how a single piece of paper can feel heavier than a lifetime of memories. When Elon handed it to me, there was something different in his eyes. As mothers, we notice these things. We notice the pauses between words. We notice the smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. We notice the emotions our children try so hard to hide. He stood in front of me for a moment longer than usual. Then he said something that immediately unsettled my heart. "Mum, please read this after I leave." That was all. No explanation, no smile, no attempt to reassure me, just those few words. Then he turned and walked away. I watched him leave the room, and for reasons I couldn't explain, I didn't open the letter immediately. Instead, I sat there staring at it. The afternoon sunlight was coming through the window. Everything around me looked completely normal. Yet inside me, something felt different. Have you ever experienced that feeling? That moment when your heart quietly warns you that something important is about to happen. Not something bad. Not necessarily something good. Just something important. I think every woman who has loved deeply understands that feeling. The envelope was simple. No decoration, no special markings, just my name written in his handwriting. But underneath my name was a sentence that made my breath catch. "If you ever find her, give this to her." Her. Just one word. No name, no explanation, no clue, only her. I remember reading that sentence over and over again. Who was she? Why was he writing to someone he hadn't even identified? Why was I involved? And why did it suddenly feel as though I was holding a secret that had lived inside my son's heart for years? Before I tell you what happened next, may I ask you something? If conversations about love, family, and the quiet emotions we carry through life speak to your heart, please take a moment to like this video. Subscribe if you enjoy spending these moments together with me. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. If this story reminds you of someone you love, share it with them today. And stay with me, because what I discovered inside this letter changed the way I understood love forever. You see, the world thinks it knows my son. People see headlines, they see interviews, they see success, they see ambition, they see a man constantly moving toward the future, but very few people ever stop to ask a simple question. What happens when the cameras disappear? What happens when the meetings end? What happens when the world stops talking? Who is the man sitting alone with his thoughts? As a mother, I have spent years watching people form opinions about my son. Some admire him, some criticize him, some think they understand him completely. But mothers see things nobody else sees. We see the moments before success. We see the moments after disappointment. We see the loneliness hidden behind achievement. We see the dreams that never become public. And most importantly, we see the parts of our children they try to protect from the world. One thing I have always known about Elon is that beneath everything people say about him, beneath every accomplishment and every challenge, he has always wanted something surprisingly simple. Love. Real love. Not admiration, not attention, not popularity, not someone who loves the image. Love. The kind of love that remains when everything else disappears. The kind of love that sits beside you during silence. The kind of love that understands your fears before you speak them aloud. The kind of love that sees your flaws and stays anyway. Tell me honestly, do you believe that kind of love still exists? Or do you think the world has become too distracted for something that deep? I often wonder about that, especially when I think about women over 50, women who have loved, women who have sacrificed, women who have experienced heartbreak, women who have learned that genuine love is much rarer than people imagine. If you are one of those women, then perhaps you already understand why this letter affected me so deeply. Because the moment I unfolded it, I realized I wasn't reading words. I was reading pieces of my son's heart. The first line was simple, painfully simple. To the woman who finally understands me. I stopped reading. I actually stopped. My eyes filled with tears before I even reached the next sentence. Not because the words were dramatic, not because they were poetic, but because they were honest. And honest words are often the most powerful. How many people spend their lives wanting to be understood, not admired, not praised, not envied, simply understood? How many women watching right now secretly wish someone would look into their heart and say, "I understand you"? I think the answer is more than most people realize. As I continued reading, I found myself traveling backward through time. I remembered Elon as a little boy. I remembered the questions he used to ask, the books he used to carry everywhere, the way he could disappear into thought for hours. Even then, there was a loneliness inside him, not because he lacked people around him, but because he experienced the world differently. Some people are born with minds that never stop moving. Their thoughts race ahead. Their dreams stretch beyond the horizon. Yet those same people often struggle to find someone willing to walk beside them. Perhaps you know someone like that. Perhaps you are someone like that. Have you ever felt alone in a crowded room? Have you ever smiled while carrying sadness nobody noticed? Have you ever wanted someone to ask how you were feeling instead of what you were doing? These questions kept echoing through my mind as I read. The letter continued. It wasn't a love letter in the traditional sense. There were no dramatic declarations, no grand promises, no fairy tale fantasies. Instead, there was vulnerability. Raw vulnerability. The kind that most people never allow themselves to show. And that is when I began to cry. Not quietly, not elegantly. I cried the way mothers cry when they suddenly realize their children have been carrying burdens alone. Because hidden between every sentence was a longing so human that it broke my heart. A longing to come home to someone. A longing to share ordinary moments. A longing to be fully seen. The world often assumes extraordinary people want extraordinary things. But sometimes extraordinary people want the same things everyone else wants. Someone waiting for them at the end of a difficult day. Someone who remembers small details. Someone who notices when they are tired. Someone who says, "You don't have to carry everything by yourself." Do you know what I find fascinating about love? The older I become, the less impressed I am by perfection. When I was younger, I thought successful relationships depended on compatibility, timing, attraction, and shared interests. Those things matter. Of course they matter. But they are not the foundation. The foundation is kindness. The foundation is patience. The foundation is choosing each other again and again, especially during difficult seasons. Would you agree? Or have your own experiences taught you something different? As the afternoon slowly turned toward evening, I continued reading. Each page revealed another layer, not of success, not of achievement, but of humanity. And for the first time in a very long time, I found myself wondering whether somewhere in this world there truly was a woman capable of understanding every part of him. Not the public version, not the famous version, the real version, the tired version, the hopeful version, the uncertain version, the version only a few people ever get to see. And as that thought settled into my heart, I turned the page. What I found written there made me put the letter down entirely, because suddenly it wasn't just about my son anymore. It was about a woman he had spent years imagining, a woman he believed might still exist. And the very first sentence describing her left me staring at the page in complete silence. I sat there for several minutes, unable to continue. The room was completely silent, yet my thoughts felt louder than they had in years. I kept staring at the page as if the words might somehow change if I looked away long enough, but they didn't. They remained exactly where they were, written in my son's unmistakable handwriting. The sentence was simple. I don't need a perfect woman. That was it. Nothing dramatic, nothing complicated, yet those 6 words carried more emotion than many people express in an entire lifetime. I think one of the greatest misunderstandings about love is that people spend so much time searching for perfection that they miss genuine connection standing right in front of them. Tell me honestly, how many times have you met someone who seemed perfect from a distance only to discover they were completely wrong for your heart? And how many times have you met someone imperfect who somehow felt like home? As women grow older, I think we begin to understand something younger people often struggle to see. Love is not about finding perfection. Love is about finding peace. The letter continued. I don't need someone who always says the right thing. I smiled through my tears. Because life has taught me that the people who love us most rarely say everything perfectly. Real love is often awkward, sometimes messy, sometimes misunderstood, sometimes clumsy. But it is honest, and honesty is worth more than perfection. I thought about my own life. I thought about all the years behind me, the difficult seasons, the unexpected turns, the moments when everything seemed uncertain. No relationship survives because two people are flawless. Relationships survive because two people decide they are worth fighting for. The older I become, the more convinced I am that kindness matters more than charm, patience matters more than beauty, character matters more than image, and consistency matters more than promises. Do you agree with that? Or has life taught you something different? I continued reading. The pages felt heavier with every paragraph, not because they were sad, but because they were so deeply human. Then I reached another passage that immediately made me stop. I hope she isn't afraid of growing older. I remember blinking several times, then reading the sentence again and again, because there was something beautiful hidden inside those words. Our world spends so much time celebrating youth that it often forgets the beauty of maturity. Yet, some of the most beautiful women I have ever met are women whose faces tell stories. Women whose hearts have survived disappointment. Women who have learned forgiveness. Women who carry wisdom earned through experience. There is a quiet elegance that only time can create, and I think many people underestimate that, especially men. But my son wasn't writing about appearances, he was writing about life, about companionship, about building something lasting. He continued. I hope she understands that wrinkles are not something to hide. The tears returned, because those words were not really about wrinkles, they were about acceptance. How many women spend years worrying about growing older? How many women look in the mirror and focus only on what has changed? How many women forget to see the strength they have gained? The courage, the wisdom, the resilience, the depth. I wish every woman watching could see herself through the eyes of someone who truly values her. Not for her age, not for her appearance, not for what she owns, but for who she is. Do you know how rare that kind of love is? The kind that sees beyond the surface, the kind that notices the soul. That is the kind of love described in this letter. As the evening grew darker outside, I turned another page. What happened next caught me completely by surprise, because suddenly the letter stopped talking about the woman and started talking about fear, not her fear, his. I am afraid she won't believe me. I froze, my heart broke, because every mother recognizes vulnerability when she sees it, especially in her child, no matter how old they become, no matter how successful they become, no matter how strong they appear. There are still moments when they are simply human. And in that moment, my son wasn't a public figure. He wasn't a businessman. He wasn't a visionary. He was simply a man afraid of being misunderstood. A man afraid that someone might doubt his sincerity. A man afraid that his heart might be dismissed before it was fully known. Have you ever felt that fear? Have you ever cared about someone deeply and worried they would never truly understand your intentions? It is a painful feeling, because sometimes we spend years building walls to protect ourselves. Then one day, we meet someone who makes us want to lower those walls, and suddenly we become vulnerable. Suddenly we risk rejection. Suddenly we risk disappointment. And that can be terrifying. I kept reading. Every page seemed to reveal another hidden layer, another truth, another emotion rarely shown to the world. Then I reached a paragraph that made me cry harder than anything before it. If she ever comes into my life, I hope she knows she never has to compete with anyone. I covered my mouth. I couldn't help it. Because so many women spend their lives competing with expectations, competing with younger versions of themselves, competing with impossible standards, competing with other women, competing with images that aren't even real. And here was a man writing that the woman he hoped to love would never need to compete at all. Because real love isn't a competition. Real love isn't comparison. Real love isn't performance. Real love is safety. It is comfort. It is acceptance. It is choosing someone exactly as they are. When was the last time you felt completely accepted, not tolerated, not judged, not measured, accepted? Think about that for a moment, because acceptance is one of the greatest gifts human beings can offer each other. The letter continued for several more pages. By then it was fully dark outside. The room was illuminated only by a lamp beside my chair. Everything felt strangely peaceful, almost sacred, as though I had stepped into a private corner of someone's soul. Then I discovered a section that felt different from everything else. A section that wasn't describing the woman. A section that wasn't describing love. A section that was describing loneliness. And this part hurt. Not because it was tragic, but because it was honest. There are days when the world feels very loud. I stared at those words, because I understood exactly what he meant. There are people whose lives are constantly surrounded by noise, messages, opinions, expectations, responsibilities, conversations, demands. Yet despite all that noise, they feel alone. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever been surrounded by people while feeling completely unseen? I suspect many women have, especially women who spend years caring for everyone else, women who become so focused on supporting others that nobody notices they need support too. The letter spoke about wanting quiet, not physical quiet, emotional quiet, the kind that only exists when you're with someone who understands you completely, someone whose presence feels restful, someone whose company feels like peace rather than effort. And that is when I realized something. My son wasn't looking for excitement. He wasn't looking for attention. He wasn't looking for admiration. He was looking for peace. And perhaps that is what all of us are searching for in the end. Not perfection. Not fantasy. Peace. Someone whose presence allows us to relax. Someone who feels like home. Someone who makes life softer. As midnight approached, I reached what I thought would be the end of the letter, but instead, I found one final page folded separately from the others. The paper looked older, almost as if it had been written at a different time. The handwriting was slightly different too, more emotional, less controlled. My hands began trembling again, because instinctively, I knew this page mattered. I knew something important was waiting for me. Slowly, I unfolded it. At the top was a sentence unlike anything else I had read, a sentence that instantly filled my eyes with tears. It wasn't addressed to me, it wasn't even addressed to the woman. It was addressed to love itself. And what my son wrote in the lines that followed would change everything I thought I understood about the secret he had been carrying all these years. As I lowered my eyes and began reading that final page, I realized I was about to discover the one truth he had never shared with anyone before. My hands were trembling. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to notice. Just enough for me to realize that whatever was written on this final page carried a different weight than everything that had come before. The room around me seemed to disappear. The ticking clock on the wall faded into the background. The evening silence grew deeper. And there I was, sitting alone with a letter that felt less like paper and more like a window into my son's soul. At the top of the page, written carefully, almost as though every word had been chosen after long reflection, was a sentence I will never forget. Dear love. Not dear woman, not dear future wife, not dear soulmate, simply, dear love. The moment I read those words, I felt tears gathering again, because suddenly I understood something. This letter was never only about a person, it was about hope, and hope is one of the most fragile things a human being can carry, especially after disappointment, especially after heartbreak, especially after life teaches you that love is not always simple. I continued reading. Dear love, if you still exist, I hope you find us before we stop believing. I closed my eyes, not because the words were complicated, but because they were painfully honest. How many people spend years pretending they no longer care about love? How many people convince themselves they are happier alone because hope feels too dangerous? How many people tell the world they are fine while secretly wishing someone would walk into their lives and change everything? I think more people feel that way than we realize, especially those who have experienced loss, especially those who have trusted the wrong people, especially those who have given their hearts away before. As we grow older, we become more careful, we learn, we protect ourselves, we become wiser, but sometimes wisdom comes with walls. And walls, even when built for protection, can become prisons. The letter continued. I hope she never feels she must earn love. That sentence broke me. Absolutely broke me. Because so many women spend their lives trying to earn what should be given freely. Trying to be enough. Trying to be prettier. Trying to be younger. Trying to be stronger. Trying to be everything for everyone. And somewhere along the way, they begin believing that love is a reward for perfection. But real love does not work that way. Real love is not a prize. Real love is not a transaction. Real love does not say, become someone else, and then I will choose you. Real love says, I see who you are, and I choose you anyway. Can I ask you something? When was the last time someone made you feel completely safe? Not impressed, not admired, safe. Because safety is one of the purest forms of love. It is the ability to exhale, the ability to stop pretending, the ability to remove the mask you've worn for years, the ability to be imperfect without fear. As I continued reading, the letter became even more personal. The words felt softer, more vulnerable, almost as though he had forgotten anyone else might one day read them. I hope she laughs loudly. I smiled through tears. Such a simple sentence. Yet it revealed so much, not because of the laughter itself, but because genuine laughter is impossible to fake for long. The people who make us laugh often become the people who heal us, the people who bring light into difficult days, the people who remind us that joy still exists. Life can become very serious, especially as we age. Responsibilities accumulate, losses accumulate, memories accumulate, the heart becomes heavier. Yet laughter remains one of life's greatest gifts, and perhaps love is partly about finding someone whose laughter feels like sunlight, someone who makes difficult days easier, someone who reminds you that happiness still belongs in your story. I turned the page. The tears never fully stopped. What surprised me most was not what the letter said. It was what it revealed. The world often believes that strong people need less love. But the opposite is usually true. Strong people often carry enormous burdens. They often spend years supporting others, protecting others, leading others, helping others. And because of that, they sometimes receive less care than they need. Have you noticed that? Have you ever been the strong one, the one everyone depended on? The one who solved problems, the one who stayed calm, the one who kept moving forward? If so, then you know something important. Even strong people need somewhere soft to land. Even strong people need understanding. Even strong people need affection. Even strong people need love. The letter understood that truth completely. Then I reached a paragraph that felt almost sacred. If she ever doubts her worth, I hope I remind her. I stared at those words for a long time, because every woman doubts herself sometimes. Every woman, the confident ones, the successful ones, the beautiful ones, the intelligent ones, all of them. At some point, every heart wonders whether it is enough, whether it is still lovable, whether it is still valuable, whether it still matters, and what a beautiful thing it is when another person helps answer those questions with kindness. Not through grand speeches, not through expensive gifts, but through consistency, through presence, through showing up again and again. Love is not built in dramatic moments. Love is built in ordinary moments. The morning coffee, the unexpected phone call, the hand held during difficult times, the quiet conversation before sleep, the simple question, "How was your day?" Those moments create lasting love, not perfection, not fantasy, consistency. Hours had passed, yet I couldn't stop reading, and then I reached the final paragraph, the final words, the final truth, the words that explained everything, the words that made me cry harder than anything else in the entire letter. "I don't need someone to save me." I nodded slowly. Then I kept reading. "I simply hope to meet someone willing to walk beside me." That was it. No dramatic ending, no grand declaration, no impossible expectation, only a wish for partnership, a wish for companionship, a wish for shared life. And suddenly I understood why the letter affected me so deeply. Because it wasn't really about my son. It was about all of us. Every person who has ever hoped for connection. Every person who has ever wanted understanding. Every person who has ever searched for home inside another human heart. The letter wasn't describing perfection. It was describing love. Real love. The kind that survives difficult days. The kind that remains when beauty changes. The kind that remains when circumstances change. The kind that remains when life becomes complicated. As I carefully folded the pages and placed them back inside the envelope, tears continued running down my face, but they were different tears now, not tears of sadness, tears of understanding, tears of hope, tears of gratitude, because for the first time, I realized something beautiful. Love is not about finding someone extraordinary. Love is about finding someone whose heart feels familiar. Someone whose presence feels peaceful. Someone whose kindness feels genuine. Someone whose loyalty remains steady. Someone whose soul recognizes yours. And perhaps, if you are watching me right now, there is something I want you to remember. No matter your age, no matter your past, no matter your disappointments, no matter how many times life has tested your heart, you are not too late for love. You are not too old for love. You are not too damaged for love. You are not too complicated for love. Your story is not finished. And maybe somewhere, someone is still hoping to find a person exactly like you. A person who understands, a person who listens, a person who stays, a person who chooses love not because it is easy, but because it is worth it. As for me, I carefully placed my son's letter back inside its envelope. Then I held it against my heart. And in that quiet moment, I whispered a prayer for the woman who might one day read those words. The woman who would understand what so few people ever truly understood. The woman who would see beyond success, beyond headlines, beyond accomplishments, and recognize the human heart underneath it all. Because in the end, that is what every one of us wants. To be seen, to be understood, to be chosen, to be loved. And perhaps that is the greatest secret hidden inside my son's letter. Not that he was searching for love, but that he still believed in it. Even after everything, even after every disappointment, even after every challenge, he still believed. And maybe that is why I cried for hours. Because hope is beautiful, because love is beautiful, and because somewhere deep inside every human heart lives the same quiet wish. To find someone who feels like home,